Hello and welcome back to AP World History Modern. Today we're going to be looking at our second day of the Americas 1.4 and kind of a focus on governance. We're going to do some other stuff as well. And then we're going to do some skill practice. Next, we're not going to do SAQ. We're going to do comparison. We're going to do some comparison work today. All right. And then maybe some additional skills as well. All right, so our objective, learn how and why states in America developed and changed over time. All right, so let's start with our daily 5. Which element of civilization is most clearly shown in this Maya artwork? So take a moment and look through that. All right, so hopefully you could infer from looking at that image that you're seeing some different social classes, right? So this is probably a member of the nobility or maybe political elite. These are probably slaves. You have probably a warrior class being depicted here, maybe a merchant class, right, being depicted there. All right, next one. In the 1930s, Professor Morley of Harvard, probably the most celebrated Mayanist of his day, espoused what is still the best known theory: the Maya collapsed because they overshot the carrying capacity of their environment. That means the population increased faster than what their agricultural base could, or where they could extract food from could. Right, they exhausted their resource base, began to die of starvation and thirst, and fled their cities in mass, leaving them as silent warnings of the perils of ecological hubris, overconfidence. Right? This is from the book by Charles Mann, and the book was called 1491. Right, so according to the passage, what was a major question Professor Morley was trying to answer about the Mayans in the 1930s? So take a moment and look through that. All right, hopefully you get the correct answer as 1. All right, next one. Based on the illustration, which statement about the Inca Empire is accurate? So take a moment, really kind of look at this image. All right, look at this image, and what do you think the best answer is? All right, so just kind of make sure you are understanding what you're doing or what you're seeing here. So this is a depiction of what you would call an aqueduct. The Inca and their people who came before them had built a vast system of aqueducts that brought water down from the glacial peaks in the Andes down into the river valleys where the population lived and where their farms were. So you'll see this vast network of aqueducts throughout the Andes. It's a kind of an amazing engineering feat. So that's what you're seeing here is one of these kind of aqueducts, a little pooling, like kind of a pooling area for it. And then what you're seeing here is that water, right? Sometimes that water is going to be used for irrigation purposes, right? So that water would then be used to irrigate, right? And this is an agricultural system known as Waru Waru. That's WARU space WARU, Waru Waru. And Waru Waru is a raised bed farming system where you have these little irrigation channels around the raised bed so that the roots have access to water in arid climates like what we see on the west side of the Andes Mountains. Very, very arid. So the answer there, with all that in mind, is right. This is technological adaptations to the environment. All right. Next question. And of course, this would be true whether you're talking about Waru Waru or terrace farming. This diagram shows the Incas had a farming system that. All right, so take a moment. All right, so hopefully you got that they're providing crops for entire society. So the fields would be dedicated to certain purposes, and then their storage houses, right, would be kind of above on the hillsides, above the field and above the terraces. Those would also you'd have kind of a segregation of the purpose, right, of those as well. All right, I actually found this probably to be the most challenging. Right, so which conclusion of the Incan city of Machu Picchu can be drawn from this map? Um, so read through the answers, right? These are basically assertions, and see if the evidence in the map supports that assertion. So take a moment and do that. All right, so 1 and 3 are obviously wrong, right? Kind of clear distractors, and but 2 is a really good distractor, right? So based on the evidence in this map, 4 is the best answer, right? 4 is the best answer. But I got caught up on 2 because when I was at Machu Picchu, my tour guide gave us a number of different assertions about what some of these things were. And they're not consistent with this assertion, right? And this is how archaeology works, and this is how history works. Is they're looking at the evidence and they're drawing conclusions based on that, and you can get multiple conclusions, right? Looking at the exact same thing. This map, right? This map would support that the city had government with laws, leadership, and a military force there. The assertion that I was given when I was on site is that it was not really a ceremonial center, but it was a university or a school, in that it was a place where the kind of nobility and the priestly class went for an education, right? So not permanently, right? And and then there was a whole bunch of different evidence that was provided that supported that assertion, which I don't really need to go over right now, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of a little kind of insight into kind of how archaeology works and how history works. All right, so, but yes. Yeah. All right, I think this is the last question. Tenochtitlan, the Aztec, perfected an unusual method of farming. They built huge rafts, covered them with earth, and floated them on a lake, right? On these chinampas, or floating gardens. They grew enough maize, corn, right, and vegetables to feed the expanded population comfortably. Eventually, roots from the tree rafts attached themselves to the bottom of the shallow lake to become permanent foundations for buildings. Which conclusion is best supported by the information in the passage? All right, so hopefully you get the correct answer as environmental adaptation. Good job. All right. All right, so today we're doing a comparison activity, right? So we're really targeting like state building, right? In general, right? So why do we have states? How are they organized? How do you enforce social norms and laws? And how do they keep power, right? And there's going to be similarities and differences between the Aztecs and the Incas, right? So how is religion, right? How is it sometimes applied by government, and how does it sometimes support government? All right, and we're going to look at economics as well, and look at geography, right? So how geography might have an impact on civilizations, right? All right, so let me pull up my Elmo, and actually before I do that, let me just show you this real quick. So if you're watching this video, then that probably means you weren't on the stream today. So if you can go to your classwork and go to your 1.4 day 2 comparison activity and click on your student copy, we're going to go through and do this comparison chart, right? So we're not going to be doing similarities and differences quite yet. Before we get into that, I want to kind of make sure you have the facts, right? And then once you have the facts, then we can start making comparisons, right? So let's kind of go through this and create just a basic chart that we can use to create like a Venn diagram, right, with similarities and differences. All right, so let's go ahead and draw this out. All right, so I'm going to draw a little thin line over here on the left, right, and let's draw another kind of thin line up across the top. All right, let's zoom this out as much as I can. That is zoomed out as much as I can. All right, so I'm holding this landscape, and I'm going to chop this into. I'm literally just recreating that Google Doc chart that you have, and then you can complete your Google Doc. Right, you can complete your Google Doc. All right, so Maya. Right, and if you're I'm sorry, Maya. And if you're looking for like what page numbers in Strayer, it's page numbers 238 through 39. All right, and then we're going to do Aztec. All right, and once again, if you're looking for where I'm pulling this information from, I'm pulling it from Strayer 516 through 518. All right, and then lastly is Inca. Right, and I do add a few things here and there, but not very much. I'm really just kind of using our primary textbook. So 518 through 521. All right. All right. And then we're doing 4 different things here. All right. So let's kind of chop this up. State building or governance. All right. State building. Use of religion. Economics. Right. Trade. Right, and then last one, kind of geography or human environment interaction. How do we adapt to our surroundings? How do our surroundings impact us, right? And impact society. All right, so let's go ahead and let's start this. So let me just use different colors, I guess, for this. All right, so the primary thing we need to really concern ourselves with is state building. All right, so we're talking about here. I guess I should probably throw in here as well, like when we're talking about, about 250 through, let's just say the 900s in the Common Era, like when we're talking about. And if we're looking for a kind of form of government that would kind of best describe what's going on in the Maya, it's city-states, right? City-states. So, no like primary central authority, right? No kind of unifying central authority. We're really talking about, local lords, and we do have some regional kingdoms, right? Some regional kingdoms, right? But never a unified, like never really a unified empire. All right. We also see here ceremonial centers. All right, we'll see ceremonial centers. And probably the most well-known, right? So let's put as an example here, Tikal. Right, Tikal is probably the most well-known. Probably the most visited by tourists would be like a Tulum or Chichen Itza, right? But those are actually kind of built, more. They're often kind of cited as Maya, but they're built right at the very end of this period, and probably more Toltec than anything. But Tikal is undoubtedly a major Mayan city. As we talk about Tikal, estimated like 50,000 people live in Tikal, maybe another 50,000 more, right, after that. And of course, Tikal is a really good example of monumental architecture. All right. So, and we're kind of combining, right? We're kind of bleeding into religion here, right, as well. So a lot of the state resources were being used up for the purposes of religion. All right, and let's just kind of throw this as well. Overall, like Mayan population, and this is a real estimate. All right, so let's just say up to 5 million is sometimes the number that is thrown about. Okay. All right, so there's your basics on Maya governance. All right, so let's pick another color, I guess. Let's do Aztecs next. All right. In the verbiage that like Strayer uses for Aztec is that it's a conquest state. Right, a conquest state. Right, and once again, loosely structured. Right, loosely structured. And there's a lot of tribute kind of associated with this, right? Tribute by conquered peoples. Right, so sometimes you'll see mentioned or called like a tribute state as well, right? But conquest state is the verbiage that we see Strayer using. I'm just going to highlight these because these are definitely the verbiage you need to really be familiar with. Okay, super important verbiage there. All right, and I guess since I did this for them, we do have a distinct capital. Right, we do have a distinct capital. Whereas in the Mayans, we're talking just city-states, so it's a whole bunch of different cities. But there is one single capital for the Aztecs, and that's Tenochtitlan. Right, Tenochtitlan, and we see an estimated 150,000 to 200,000 people. Right, 150,000 to 200,000 people live on the island where it's on out in Lake Texcoco. Right, and then because we did this for the last one, I'm going to just do this here as well. Aztec population, like how many people were kind of living within the realms of this conquest state, not in Tenochtitlan, but within the conquest state. Estimates are usually around like 5 to 6 million. Right, 5 to 6 million is kind of a generally accepted number for that. All right, let's pick on a new color. Let's go with baby blue. All right. So Inca. Right. So Inca Strayer uses the verbiage bureaucratic. Right, a bureaucratic empire. Right. I'm also seeing theocracy. Right, mentioned as well. And because this is kind of one of those things where religion is the ideology, right? Right, religion is the ideology, that directs Incan society. Incan society from top to bottom. Right, so religion is a major kind of part of this state as well. We also see, just kind of under this right here, state, at least in practice, or in theory, in practice is a different thing. In theory, the state owned all the land, right, within the empire. Right, we see governmentally and administrative. Right, we see an administrative hierarchy. Right, we see an administrative hierarchy where we have, governors. Right, we have governors, we have local officials. Right, governors, we have local officials, and of course these are appointed positions, right? So appointed by the governors or the emperor. Right, appointed. So not like what we were talking about with China, where there's like a civil service exam. No such equivalent that we know of with the Inca. Right? No such equivalent there. All right, what else we have here? Inspectors. Right, large bureaucracy. Right, large bureaucracy. We have over 80 political divisions called provinces. Right, so 80 political. Right, and of course, we've got provincial, a whole series of provincial officials, and a lot of the record keeping is going to be done on something called keepers. Right, so keepers. So that'll keep track of things like population, harvest, stuff like that. Okay. All right. So this is the primary thing that really wanted you to get done today is the governance. And then once you get that done, then we can start talking about making some comparisons. So in class, we finish up one of these charts, and then time permitting, we pick out some similarities and some differences, right? So, kind of throw together a quick little Venn diagram and come up with some of these, all right? All right, so that's easily kind of the most important thing that we need to do. If you want, you can stay on after I finish this, and I'll show you the kind of rest of the answers that, to this chart. If you are, if you want like the full, the full coverage of this thing, then just stay on for a minute or two, okay? All right, so yes, as far as the thesis, when we start doing, similarities and differences, those, by identifying things that are similar or by identifying things that are different, that kind of automatically starts pushing us into thesis territory. Like what is the common bond between the comparison that you're making, right? So so it is kind of a good little jump in to coming up with a thesis claim. Right, so if you're ever given a prompt like develop an argument that evaluates how one or more states established authority from 1200 to 1450, well, what two similarities are you finding there? And then how could you kind of categorize them for analysis, right? Something that would fit for both, or if you're doing for the difference also. Right, so this is kind of one of those things we just kind of bounce ideas off each other in class. So you're welcome to shoot me an email with an idea or two and see if that works. But that's about it for today. Okay, because that's how we in class is just kind of throwing some ideas around. All right, states form for many of the same reasons and keep power in many of the same ways. Right, and as I go through kind of some of the next, I'm going to go through some of the rest of this chart in a minute. You'll see, you'll see how those other things come into play. All right, so that's if you want to leave, go ahead. That's really all that we did in class today. So make sure you fill out your chart and you submit that on Google Classroom with the state building facts. That's what you're being graded on, is these facts here. All right. So Sapriati, if you're leaving, if you are staying, then right. If you are staying, then I'm going to continue going over the chart. All right. All right, so I guess I'll just stick with one color. This is a darker purple. I'm gonna start up here just by putting Mesoamerican cultural zone. And same for the Aztecs, and a Mesoamerican cultural zone, right? Because religion is going to be very similar between these two, because they both they both kind of trace their roots back to, and I guess I'll put this here, Mesoamerican cultural zone equals Olmec, right? You know, the kind of mother civilization for Latin America, right? So there's going to be a lot of just kind of basic similarities between those two. All right, so that's it. Let's go through some unique religion things here, right? So we mentioned already monumental, right? A lot of monumental architecture, right? A lot of monumental architecture, and something that we already mentioned before, these kind of ceremonial centers, right? And of course, these ceremonial centers are gonna bleed into economic, okay? Because they also become centers for trade, right? These ceremonial centers. All right, priests, right? We know we kind of have a priest class, right? And these are probably our intellectuals within Incan society, and from them we get some advanced mathematics, right? Right? Some mathematical principles or systems, such as the concept of zero, right? Concept of zero. You know, this is, we also talked about this with South Asia, the Gupta, right? Came up with the concept of zero, so kind of separately, right? So something that's is not developed on its own in places like Europe or China, right? And then place notations. All right, so place notations, but we also see a lot of kind of astronomical stuff. All right, so astronomy, you know, very very well known for their calendar system. You know, the ability to predict, right? Predict lunar and solar eclipses. Now, I don't know enough about this subject to kind of speak authoritatively on this, but like I know in European history, the prediction of things like lunar eclipses or solar eclipses, you know, the general idea was one thing, but predicting exactly where it was going to be and when it was going to be, that was, we don't really get that until I believe it's Newton, right? So kind of the invention of calculus in order to, you know, calculus is needed in order to do that. So I'm not sure exactly, you know, whether it's the same level of accuracy or not. I just don't know enough. There are limitations in my knowledge of this stuff. You know, but calendars, you know, length of the solar year, right? Length of solar year. Writing system. Right, a writing system. So a cuneiform, like a symbol, pictograms, right? A cuneiform pictogram writing system. And we also see here like frequent warfare, right? And there is a religious component to this, right? There is a religious component to this. You know, capture, right? Capture and sacrifice prisoners. Right, that is the kind of the goal or the reason for doing this. All right. Go ahead and zoom in on this a little bit better since we're just copying off from this. All right, the next one. If you're, I doubt anyone will probably ever actually watching this video into this this far, but here we go. So once again, we're in that Mesoamerican agricultural zone. So we also see a lot of monumental architecture. A lot of monumental architecture. So when you go to the Tenochtitlan, you'll see the giant pyramids. Aztec patron deity. We have And I will probably butcher the pronunciation of this, but it's Huitzilopochtli. Okay, I believe that is how it is pronounced. And this becomes the one thing that kids or students are they always learn about, right? Their primary deity requires, right? He required human blood, right? It requires human blood to replenish his energy and life-giving powers, right? Or force, might be a better way to say this, right? Hence, warfare. Right? Warfare has a goal, right? It has a very, very specific goal. Right? Warfare has a goal, capturing prisoners, right? For human sacrifice, right? So human sacrifice in this case here. Human sacrifice is performed in the service of politics. Right? It's performed in the service of politics. All right, next one. Inca. So I will stay consistent with my colors. All right, so my Inca. All right, so once again, what I already said there, religion. All right, religion is the state ideology. Right, top to bottom, religion is the state ideology. So, I guess this could be, say, directs life, right? Directs life much more, right, more than for Aztec or Maya. Although I think the people who were sacrificed might differ with that opinion, but that's fine. So we've got a creator god. And of course, all of these would be considered kind of, there's pantheons, so polytheistic religions, right? Okay, and so we have a creator god, and then there's a son of the creator god. And that's generally the one that people have heard of. Right? So, of course, you can see Inti. Right? You can see Inti. And the way this plays down kind of within society, right? So, societal impact. Right? Societal impact. We're really starting to, this is pretty kind of simple, direct connection here. You've got like the Sapa Inca. Sometimes it's S-A-P-A, sometimes it's S-P-A-Y. The Sapa Inca and the Koya. Right, Sapa Inca and the Koya. And the Sapa Inca was said to be, the child or the son of Inti. Okay? Or the sun god. Right? And Koya, the descendant of the moon. All right? And of course, these two are a really good example of something known as gender parallelism. Gender parallelism, where men and women have their spheres and they control those individual spheres. There's not a lot of overlap between them. One last little part for this is this concept of chosen women. So women would have been selected in kind of young child or kind of late childhood, and to become a chosen woman. And a lot of the chosen women simply worked in the service of the Sapa Inca. Okay. But there's a select few become wives of the sun. Right? So part of another way to describe that would be like a harem. I think I'm a little below mine. for a second for you. All right. So wives of the sun. All right. So if so far hasn't scared you away, I guess I will continue. All right. Let's do a couple of basics for economics and trade. All right. Economics and trade. What color am I? It's hard to remember what color I'm talking about. No universal. Right, so no universal currency throughout the empire or anything like that. I have read before that they used to use cacao beans. Right, but we do have trade centers. We do have places where trade occurred, and that's religious, religious with with trade, and that's pretty common with all religions, right? Is merchants, merchants will go to religiously ceremonial sites, right, and sell their wares, right? So that is true not just in the Americas, it's true all over the world. All right, what is being traded, right? So we're talking about the trade of obviously cacao, okay? So it's just chocolate, right? If you don't know that chocolate literally grows on trees, right? It grows in pods, right? So but other things like peppers, and let's just put advanced metallurgy. Right, advanced metallurgy. We know that they had copper. Right, we know that they had copper. We also see a lot of specialized artisans. Right, so things like pottery, cotton textiles, and obviously with metallurgy we can have advanced tools. The cotton that we grow in the Americas today, like in the United States today, it's not this. We actually use a South Asian cotton strain from India, just larger, right? And it produces more. All right, where are we at now? Aztec, and I'm on Aztec economics. All right. So what are we talking about here now? Trade. Right. With them, we see something we don't really see a lot of with the Inca is, long distance. Right? Long distance trade, and local. That being said, the Maya were around at the same time that Teotihuacan, the trading city just north of Tenochtitlan, or where that was built, hundreds of years later. So I guess the Maya did have access to Teotihuacan, which would have given them wider access to North America. So I guess it's not. I guess there is kind of long distance trade through Teotihuacan. Right, Teotihuacan becomes the place where that's possible. All right, what do we got here? So Pochiteca. Okay, so these are our merchants, right? And legally they are commoners, but they often have more wealth than than nobility, right? So commoners, but a lot of wealth, right? And we know that they owned slaves. Right? We know that they owned slaves. What kind of merchandise are we talking about here? Merchandise. We're talking, since we have metallurgy up there, what kind of advanced metallurgy are we talking about? Smelting of gold, silver, but really copper is a big one. Right? Copper and brass. These are things where you have to mix different metals. Precious stones. Right? Precious stones, such as things like turquoise, right? Like turquoise. What else we see? Shells, snails, feathers from the Amazon basin. Shells, snails, feathers, tropical bird feathers. All right. We also know that conquered people will provide a lot of the labor. Right, so labor, LA. Right? Labor is a lot of it's done by conquered people. Right, so that's from agriculture to textiles to military. They've got a very large and diverse market. All right. As far as the Inca. As far as the Inca are concerned, let's go ahead and continue this. Probably the biggest part of the story for the Inca would be Mita. Right? So your textbook doesn't put the apostrophe there, but oftentimes you'll see it like that. So this is like your state labor service. Obligation. And, you see things here, right? They build things like, the Inca roads. Right? The Inca road is built through Mexica, the bridges, terraces, the aqueducts. Waru, right, is built using this. And of course, because of this infrastructural, infrastructure that gets created through the NECA process, we have local and long distant trade. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Not right now, though, okay? Give me a few more minutes.
I need it right now.
Can you tell her to come here, please?
Daddy wants you. No, this one is little. Because that's all her schoolwork.
You sit there for a minute until I'm done. Okay. All right. Last thing is human environment interaction. Right. Human environment interaction. And excuse me. Then you can sit over there. Just don't go over there again. All right. Then go get it and be quiet. All right. Engineered. We know that they have an engineered landscape. Right? We know that they have an engineered landscape. They do things like drain swamps. All right. Terraced hillsides. All right. Terraced hillsides. Okay, I'm going to be back in. I'm going to pause for. All right, sorry about that. All right, so terraced hillsides. Where was I? Water management system. All right, a water management system. All right, for the Aztec. For the Aztec. So we know that Tenochtitlan, right, itself is like a kind of a an adaptation marvel to the environment. Right, so it's like an island city. Right, we know that it's located on Lake Texcoco.
I never saw you put it there.
Right, Lake Texcoco. And, and let's just say, let's put this down. Examples of advanced engineering. Right, so what are some examples of advanced engineering around here? We have canals. We've got aqueducts. Right, bringing water and fresh water into the city. As far as the canals, the Spanish, when they saw this, they made comparisons to the city of Venice. Okay, so we've got dikes, we've got a causeway. And of course, that causeway is also like a defensive thing. You can pull up I guess I should probably put bridges. You can pull up the bridges, and that way you could kind of protect yourself from invasion. And of course, the most famous example is the Chinampa. Right, and of course, that's your floating garden. All right, and on there you grow things like maize, right, maize and other vegetables. All right, the last thing I'm gonna go through, the last kind of example, is for the Inca, right? And something to kind of keep in mind, right, is that the Incan civilization is in the Andes Mountains, right? And the empire itself, right? The empire itself runs 2,500 miles north to south, right? So it's a massive empire. Kind of similar, almost to like the length of the United States from Florida to Maine, right? So it's a massive empire, and of course, it's in the mountains. You have to have a whole lot of adaptations. So, what are some examples of advanced engineering that we see? Let me slide that up a little bit. Let me see there we go. All right, so one would be the Inca Road. The Inca Road is probably the most famous. The Inca Road itself, it's approximately 24,800 miles, right, of road. We see bridges. Right, normally in class, I do show a little video of there are some groups who still make these bridges in the traditional way, woven out of grass, and then so the women will weave the grass into ropes. Those ropes are then woven together into cords, and then every year the old bridge is cut down and they put a new bridge up. It's an amazing process to watch. Other things about that we kind of see with the Inca Road, and I guess Tambos is probably the more well-known of the two. Right, so approximately every 20 kilometers, right, every 20 kilometers is like a little small station, like a way station, right, and these are generally the fancier ones. The less fancier ones, right, let me go by that. Other examples. I'm going to run out of space here, I think, but terrace. Right, the whole terrace farming, aqueducts, right, and the canals and irrigation, but just leave it aqueducts. And then lastly, Waru would be another really good example. All right, so that is that chart for the one person who stayed on. All right. That is all I've got. See you next time.